Hello YouTube, we're on the Real Programming channel. I'm its host. My name is Andrei. I greet you, welcome you. This is our 14th lesson. We're talking about HTML, PHP and MySqL. We will talk about query the MySqL database with PHP. The MySqL query function needs two pieces of information to query out of query: a database connection and an SQL query string. Okay, let's look on code. And don't forget, remember, you will find all the code and materials of this lesson under this video in the description, link to Google Drive. Okay. So, MySqL query database connection query. This is the database connection that's already been established via the MySqL_connect with two brackets function. This is the SQL query that will be performed. That one we in a string, stored in a string. The database connection required by the MySqL query function was returned to you by the MySqL_connection with two brackets function. Just in the case that's a bit fuzzy, here is the code that established that connection. Remember, these connection variables will be different for your database setup. The connection to the database was stored away earlier in the $dbc. So, you have a database connection, $dbc and SQL query, $query. All that's missing is passing them to the MySqL query function. The query, the database connection, the result of the query. And the SQL query is a request written in SQL code that is sent to the database server. This code shows that calling the MySqL query function isn't just a one-way communication. The function talks back to you by returning a piece of information that's stored in the $result variables, but no actual data is returned from the insert query. The $result variable just stored whether or not the query issued by MySqL query was successful. The MySqL query with two brackets function requires a database connection and a query string in order to carry out an SQL query. Close your connection with MySqL close. Okay. And since we're only interested in executing the single insert query, the database interaction is over, at least as far as the script is concerned. And when you're done with database connection, you should close it. Database connections will close by themselves when the user navigates away from the page, but just like closing a door, it's a good habit to close them when you finish it. The PHP MySqL close function closes a MySqL database connection. This is where you pass the database connection variable that we've been using to interact with the database. It's a good habit to close the MySqL database connection when you're finished with it. In this case of Owen script, we need to pass MySqL close the actual database connection, which is stored in the $dbc variable. This variable holds a reference to the database connection, which was created by MySqL Connect back when the connection was first opened. But if database connections are closed automatically, why bother? Database servers only have a certain number of connections available at a time, so they must be preserved whenever possible. And when you close one connection, you freeze that connection up so that a new one can be created. If you are on a shared database, you might only have 5 connections allocated to you, for example, and as you create new database-driven applications, you won't to keep your supply of available connections open as much as you can. There are no dumb questions. Couldn't you just put all the SQL code directly in the MySQL query function in place of the $query variable? You could, but it gets messy. It's just a bit easier to manage your code when you store your queries in variables and then use those variables in the MySQL query function. Should the code that issues the insert query be doing anything with the result? Perhaps yes. So far we've been using die to terminate a script and send a message to the browsers if something goes wrong. Eventually, you may want to provide more information to the user when a query is unsuccessful, in which case you can use the result of the query to determine the query's success. Bullet points. Database connections need a location, a username, a password, and a database name. The MySQL connect function creates a connection between your PHP script and the MySQL database server. The die function exits the script and results feedback if your connection fails. Using an SQL query from PHP code involves assembling the query in a string and then executing it with a call to MySQL query. Call the MySQL close function to close the MySQL database connection from PHP when you're finished with it. Test drive. Replace the mail code in Owens report.php script so that it inserts data into the MySQL database and then try it out. OK. Remove the code in the report.php script that mails from data to Owen. In its place, enter the code that connects to your MySQL database, builds a SQL query as a PHP string executes the query on the database and then closes the connection. Here is the new PHP database code you've been working on. Don't enter the "this is" tag in the report PHP since you're adding the code to a spot in the script that's already inside the text. Upload the new report PHP file to your web server and then open the report.html page in a browser to access the report and abduction form. Fill out the form and click report abduction to store the data in the database. Now fire up your MySQL tool and perform a select query to view any changes in the database. Is that correct? Write down if you think this is what the script should be doing and why. Hang on a second. Isn't the whole point here to take data from a form and store it in a database? It looks like the query is inserting the same data no matter what gets entered into the form. It don't see how this PHP script automates anything. This is a big problem. The insert query needs to be inserting the form data, not static strings. The query we build consists of hard-coded strings, as opposed of being driven from next data that was entered into the alien abduction form in other. For the script to work with the form, we needed to feed the data from the form fields into the query string. This from data needs to make its way into the $query string. The alien's abduction form is where the user's report data comes from. Brain power. What PHP code can help us get the values from Owen's form into the insert query? Your answer you may write on a comment, for example. I will be waiting for it. $_post provides the form data. We will talk about this in the next lesson. And for this, here is our lesson 14 about HTML. PHP MySQL is over. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Put likes, share with friends, and comment. Meditate. Do exercise every evening. Drink more water for the brain. That's all. Thank you. Bye.